You're listening to the Talking 20 podcast. This podcast is for you if you're in your 20s and you're thinking, what the hell am I doing? We've all been there and we want to talk about it. We're your hosts, Bridget O'Rourke and Mary Margaret Courtney, and we sit down with fellow millennials to chat about their journey and hear what they've learned along the way. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Talking 20 podcast, and happy spring! So Mary and I, along with our friend Brienne, run an event management company called Collective Creations Event Management. Mary spearheads it, and I kind of follow along in her tracks along with Brienne and help out in different areas. I specifically run marketing and communications. And we focus a lot on weddings, a lot of wedding day of coordination and planning. It's a whole lot of fun. So, as you know, we've also been doing Talking 20 podcast for the past year together, so it's safe to say that Mary and I talk a lot and we do a lot of projects together. So,
oh yeah.
So in this episode, we want to share some tips with you about how to start a business with your friend, because we're going through it right now and we've learned a lot in the past, I don't know what, Mary, 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years, but like longer. We've been doing projects for a while. We just didn't really know where those were going.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, our whole lives. Anyway, a long time. Yeah. Let's say 5 years. Mm-hmm. So our past 5 years of working together. And, you know, starting a business with a friend can be scary. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't want to ruin your friendship. There's money involved. It can be tricky. But it's also super rewarding because you get to actively choose who to work with rather than having to figure it out with somebody that you don't know or you don't choose. But you have to keep in mind that the qualities that make a good friend aren't necessarily the qualities that make up a good business partner. So Mary and I are going to chat about some of the things that we've learned along the way, and hopefully you can learn from as well. But before we get into it, if you're new to the podcast, make sure to follow on your favorite streaming platform. We're going to be coming up with lots more specifically informative episodes in the coming months, and we'll still have people on telling their stories, but you will be hearing a lot more from just Mary and I on different things that we're learning in our 20s. Mm-hmm. And if you follow us on Instagram at Talking 20 Podcast, you can follow along with our health and fitness journey that we're on right now while we're training for our 15-kilometer Tough Mudder in September.
Oh, baby.
Is
creeping up.
It is creeping up, and that's a whole other talking point of things.
A whole other thing. And guys, if you want to hear about it, you'll have to listen to another epi.
A whole other epi, yes. We did one recently where we talked about kind of like the mental hurdles that we're going through training for this. We want to get really real about this training process because it's friggin' hard.
It's garbage.
It really sucks. We're both gaining weight.
Which I know everyone's like, it's muscle, and that's what Bridget keeps saying. But, like, mentally, it's rough. It's rough.
It's tough, yeah.
But anyway.
So, yeah, if you want to hear about that, you can go listen to our last episode. I believe it was our last episode, Tough Mudder Training, Update 1. Yeah, but that's not what this episode's about. So, Mary, let's dive in to our first point of how to start a business with a friend.
Well, as you mentioned, we have a long history together, and not everybody has that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, that's not my circumstance, I think there's still lessons you can take away from this on how you're going to build your relationship with someone. Totally. And things to look out for and work on. We never thought we would work together.
Never.
Like if you ask our moms, our mother's friends, anyone who knew us as children, they're like, what? Because we played well together as children, but there was always a breaking point. Where our moms were like, and now they're done and we need to take them home. So if we had like a sleepover, the next morning was like, get them away from each other, because then it just went bad. Like usually you ended up crying, and
classic
or
Bridget.
Maybe me, but usually it was Bridget.
Usually Bridget.
And and it just like didn't always end well. So yeah, like that was just our relationship in that regard. We volunteered together where, you know, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm reading some bullet points that Bridget wrote, not me, based on other conversations we've had. So I'm just going to bypass the volunteer together part. But we did. We volunteered together.
We did it. We volunteered together.
We did. We've done a lot of work together in different capacities as we've gotten older. So just like quick history for that with people is that both of us were working. Like I went to school for musical theater. Bridget went to school for radio and television. So kind of in the same world, but not really. And then we both were coming out of school, not really sure career-wise where we were going to land. And what we're learning now, it's because we're very multifaceted. Like we have different capabilities and skills. And it's just from being interested in different things growing up. We are good at learning with technology and programs and apps. So as the world started to go that way, that worked in our favor. Social media, stuff like that. But then we're also ADD, ADHD. So we have learned that we really love having multiple projects on the go, being active, being with people, high energy situations, and then, going home and dying after. So that's like slowly... Classic. So that's led us to like want to be in the same industry, but it started with us just kind of like being interested in the same projects, volunteering together, working events just because we wanted to. It was purely out of passion. Maybe we didn't love our job at the time, so we wanted like something that used the other part of our brain or whatever. And then from there, the big one that I think really showed like, oh, we can do this together is when you joined our team, Coca, for the conference, where anyone who listens to the podcast already knows all about Coca. If you don't, half our guests are people Mary/Bridget met from Coca, and they're fantastic. It's just an amazing network community that is huge for me. So Bridget joined the team one year, and she technically was working under me, but it was in like a very relaxed setting where she kind of, because she's volunteering, could have a bit more control of like her own schedule and how much workload she took on
and how many naps she had during the day
and her naps, but it just put us in the perfect situation to be like, okay, Mary's gonna be the boss, and how does this work for a relationship in a lower stakes situation? The events were very intense, and the week and the conference is intense, but yeah, if Bridget was like, I'm tired, I need a minute, I need a rest, I was able to just like be like, yeah, go sleep. I understand you need that. And in this environment, that was okay.
Totally.
And then from there, we went into a high stakes situation doing the Alt Mill Wine and Food Festival, where we produced it, we financed it, we planned it, executed it, everything. And Bridget and Brienne, as we mentioned, were my right-hand girls, and then eventually just kind of like took on their own roles and ran with them. So when we ran that event, it was kind of like, okay, let's see if this is going to work, because we planned this whole thing and we don't know, like we haven't done this on this level before. And it just ran like butter how well we worked together, and building those other experiences together and like other relationships and experiences helped us really see, like, when it came to like this high stakes situation, oh, we can do this together. And so now, as we're going to talk, we've like really come to understand how we turn this into a business and how to make it sustainable, and that we don't burn out and don't hate each other. And we're like learning these skills as we go, which is what I think people are going to really love hearing about. If you're looking for a business partner, like, these are some things that like have really helped you and I keep this thing going. And so far it's been really successful.
Yeah, exactly. So like the main points there are to make sure that you're compatible as business partners, and like Mary and I have done, volunteer together somewhere. So see, the higher the stakes, the more insight you're going to get into how you guys work together. So when we were with the Ultimate Wine and Food Festival, it showed us a lot more than when I was volunteering at Coca. And it just, you just gotta make sure that you're compatible and have the same interests and practice it ahead of time. And you'll be good. You'll be good to go.
Yeah. So let's break it down a little bit. Like, what are some of these things that we do that keep us moving?
Good question. Probably brings us to our next point, actually,
that was my segue.
Hey, we set expectations and goals. So Mary and I like to sit down, we'll drink some wine, and we'll do a brain dump of all of our ideas and our goals of things that we want to accomplish with this business or with the next event that we're putting on. We want to make sure that both of us have very similar expectations and goals, and we're both on the same page about the directory that we're going. We also want to be, another big thing is to be completely transparent about your financial situation, because you may need to like work part-time, full-time on the side in order to keep the business running and on its feet, as I'm doing right now. I'm working full-time. Mary's doing the business full-time, but it's not a sustainable thing for us to both be doing this full-time right now because the business isn't making enough money for that.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Right now, where we're at, this is what makes sense. Is that
totally.
This is, something you invest in on a smaller level, which really, like, if for anyone who's maybe thinking, like, how does this relate to me in any way, being the person doing it full time, having that support beside you to just say, like, we got this, keep moving. Bridget doing the marketing communications, it's kind of nice to have you, like, out of it for a bit, and then you come back in and you can look at it from an outside perspective on like how the brand looks, how the website looks, like just coming in and fine-tuning things, and it gives me the support I need to keep operating. And yeah, it's just like it's knowing that not everyone has to be, and financially you were talking about, but like physically, financially, we don't need to all be invested the same amount at the same time. Anyone who's listening to the podcast is like, oh, this name Brienne has all of a sudden started popping up. Brienne did the wine and food festival with us. COVID hit, and she took on other work that was working for her. And once Collective Creations was in a position to bring her back on board, she has now joined back on, and we've talked about a long-term plan to keep her in it. But she is like foundationally a part of this company. Just over the past 2 years, we couldn't support her. So that was just what it was. So there's like a million points I could go in there, but I want us to keep going. Can you talk, I don't know if you said it, but did you talk about SMART goals and what SMART goals are?
No, I didn't talk about SMART goals. So this is a really good actionable step that you can take in order to make sure that all of your goals are aligned. There's this thing called SMART goals. So essentially what you want to do is you want to make sure that all of your goals have actions that you can take with them. So SMART is actually what is it, acronym? Is that what the word is? So S stands for, you know what? I actually don't even know.
And this is something that I just learned. Like I always worked on, there's like a leadership skill that I learned, which was about like, is it important? Is it urgent? Is it important and urgent? And then there's another column there. It's like 4 squares.
Urgent
but anyway,
and important. The other combination of words that you haven't used yet.
Yeah. But I have to look it up, and maybe we'll post it on social media or something. But
yeah,
it's helped me looking at SMART goals a little bit different than like, is it urgent? Is it important? Because emotionally, I can get too invested in something, and in my head it's urgent but it's not, or in my head it's important but it could wait.
Right.
And just to give a bit of context to that, if you're getting overwhelmed with your business and what needs to happen, you need to take a step back with your team and look at the things that are like, this needs to happen today and this could happen next week, because it will get overwhelming and you'll get wrapped up in projects and you'll get wrapped up in tasks that it'll feel like you're drowning. And so it's the best way to like break it all down, whether you need to physically write it on paper or put it up on a blackboard, like visualize for you and your partner what is like, this needs to happen.
Yeah. And so I can go into SMART goals now.
Yes. Yeah.
Which brings us into SMART goals. So the acronym that it stands for is like, S is specific. So you want to make sure that this goal is like that you are defining it to a T so that all of you are on the same page. Then you want to go into it being measurable. So at what point are you going to reassess when the goal, like if you're on the right track, and when do you want this goal to be completed by? The next one is make sure it's achievable. So obviously you want it to be a goal that is attainable, because otherwise it's not going to work. So by doing these SMART goals, it actually helps you realize, okay, is this achievable? And over what timeline can I achieve this? The next one is the R stands for relevant. So just actually it stands for a lot of different things, but you just want to make sure that it's relevant for the company at that specific time, or figure out at what point will it be a relevant goal. You also want to make sure that it will have like results, that this goal is going to give you results. And then the last one is the time based. So you want to figure, or the timeline. So you want to figure out how long is this going to take me to do, and that kind of connects with the measurable one when you're coming up with different times to like check in and figure out if your goal is on track. So that's what SMART goals are. It just really helps you define what the goal is and make sure that everybody's on the same page, and then having like actionable steps in order to get there. And this helps it just become more realistic, and it's not just like you're always kind of thinking, oh yeah, I want to do that one day. Oh yeah, I want to do that one day. You actually have to sit down and be like, okay, well, but how?
Yeah, and for some people, this might be an easy thing, but for us, I've noticed we need to work this out together sometimes, where we're like, okay, things seem like they're all over the place. We have a lot going on. We committed to achieving a lot of things, those that we're not meeting those goals. Even if you're like, we get off a call and we're like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. You're going to do this, this, and this. And then a week goes by and we feel stuck or drowning or whatever. We'll get back on the call and we'll break that down without literally doing it. But as you were explaining it more, I'm like, yeah, sometimes it's really unclear. Like it does take work to stop and be like, okay, what's the best way forward? And for me, it's just like a way of us not burning out or getting mad at each other for not doing something. It's like how important is this? And that timeline piece and the results piece will tell you, for the most part, like, okay, this should wait, or this is actually like a big picture idea. Yeah. So, maybe I need to work on setting up our QuickBooks account before I worry about, oh, we have an animal interruption.
Oh, we were just talking before recording this about how I do a lot of podcast pet interruptions on our Instagram page, about how my cat always interrupts, and none of Mary's pets have ever been involved in pet interruptions because they're good pets and never interrupt. But here we go.
Now she's right in front of your face.
Here we are.
Okay, we're good.
She
won't make a noise, but she's there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So if you can like learn about these skills, go online, Google it, take a class, whatever if you have to do. But with your business partner, it's a really good way to keep that line of communication there and keep you guys grounded in expectations and what's actually going to be achieved. And we've noticed we achieve a lot when we stick to this.
Yeah.
Like we'll get 2 months later and we'll be like, holy shit, what did we just do?
A lot of the time we're actually, because the SMART goals make us so excited to get moving on it, we'll actually like beat our goal of like of our timeline. So
almost always. Yeah.
Definitely a good actionable tip to do.
Yeah. So then the big one that is so awkward for people is getting everything in writing. This way, when you agree on something and you're both in the same head, I'm not going to read it. I can't do that. I just can't be you.
You don't have to read it.
I'm trying to be you. Bridget's so good at like being a radio host, like reading what she's.
So I'm just reading on paper.
Yeah, getting everything in writing. So you can do this in different ways. Some people, you would have like a legal contract that says like, this is what the plan is. This is what we're doing, especially if you're like investing or you have like a larger, maybe you're doing like a brick and mortar store or whatever. For us, it's less tangible. There's less on the line month to month. So our agreements are more so written in like, we have spreadsheets of who has spent what money. We have, what would you call them? Not brain dump, but we have documents that state like each project. And that's mostly Bridget does like her own organizational piece of like who's doing what. And it's all written up in a document, but it keeps us accountable and it keeps us on the same page of like, okay, what did Mary hear in that conversation? And what did Bridget hear in that conversation?
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. So if you sit down and you're really excited about a business endeavor with a friend and everyone's telling you like, oh, be careful, this and that. It'd be great to be able to say, no, we've thought about that. And actually, here's how we're going to deal with that hard problem. Or here's how we'll deal with that situation if it comes. We are always putting the relationship first and making sure that it is written down so that it's something tangible we can pull from as it gets more complicated along the way.
Exactly, yeah. And when you write all of these things down, you're in the same headspace. You've talked about it so that, if Mary's having an off day and she's like, no, we never did that, I can say, no, when we were both on the same page, we wrote this down, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do it when you're in the same headspace. Do it when you're both excited and passionate at the same time, and write it all down. Think of all the different scenarios that can come up, and write down what you're going to do in those scenarios so that when things do come up, when people are mad, when, you can refer back to that document. So that's a really good point to have. The next one, I feel like all my points are about money.
Well, it all comes back to money, but it's like the hardest conversation to have.
It really is.
It's like the hardest part of any relationship, really.
Yeah. And you don't want to let it become an issue. So
no.
Be transparent, like I said, from the beginning about money, about your personal financial situations, about the company's financial situations. Okay, so I have this as a point on here, but I actually don't know if it's the best way to go. This works for Mary and I. This might not work for you. But if you take turns doing the small investments that you need in order to the small investments, and keep track of those expenses so that when the business starts making money, you can be reimbursed properly. But like I said, it's probably not the best because that might get hairy if you're both putting in different amounts or whatever. So another option is you can actually open a joint business account and invest the same amount of money into that business account. So say I was like, I'm willing to invest $500. Mary's willing to invest $500. You have $1,000 now in that business account that you then use. You both know that you have invested $500 and you'll get paid back when your company breaks even. So that's a really good way to start it and to figure out, the money situation from the beginning. I'm sure there are tons of other tips and tricks online about how to not let money become an issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but another big...
sorry, just to break that down slightly, our company has slowly evolved in the different aspects of it. So, the number one thing is always cash flow. If you don't have cash flow, don't spend a lot of money. Find a ways to do it cheap and free. When you have the cash flow, take that on. So there's been points where I've had good cash flow. So we did a wine and food festival and it was never put on Bridget to have to do anything but give her time. And then I tried to accommodate that and provide for you whatever I could, because physically the company wasn't paying either of us really, unless the festival made money. But I was able to take that potential hit if it didn't work at that time. If you're in a situation, also, if you're not good at managing money, don't take those risks. Bridget and I think, are fairly confident that we're good at managing money. Before this, I had... you are. I mean, I don't know your personal bank account, but
we can see it from we can see it from a really good standpoint, and we understand it. We don't understand the inner workings of it, but we can see it on a big picture.
We're doing low cost, low risk situation.
Yeah.
And then when we went into a high risk situation, which was the wine and food festival, Mary was willing to take that hit on that risk. Mm-hmm. And to give people perspective on that, I had some investment in that festival, because in my mind at that time, what I needed professionally was a new opportunity that I wasn't seeing from, job postings or anything. And I wasn't going back to school. I don't know how old, I was 25. So at this point, I find a lot of people, going back to our whole actual talking 20 millennial shit, people go back to school when they're at that phase and they're like, it's not working, or I need more education. I'm not getting the jobs that I'm applying for. So they go back to school for more education. For us, we were like, why don't we invest in ourselves and not in an institution? Mm-hmm. Because our industry allows us to do so. So in my mind, I was like, I would go pay a school blank amount of money any day. I would pay for a program any day, and that would be acceptable, and then I would slowly pay that off. So instead, I was like, why don't I just put it into this event and learn it by literally doing it? Yeah. And then we're building the company, building the resume, building finance. I could do that because financially I was in that place. I couldn't ask that of you. Mm-hmm. And then now we're sitting in a place where things are moving and money is coming in at a really nice cash flow. So you and I are looking at that and going, okay, where do we spend that money appropriately? Mm-hmm. And even though it's Bridget's the one who started the Talking 20 podcast, and that was her kind of financial endeavor with with our company. And then Mary's doing whatever, a photo shoot with Collective Creations, and that's hers. We've always seen it as like our money and our bubble, but we weren't the type of business where we were like, we need blank amount of money to open the doors by this date. Yes. Where some people might be in that situation. So if you are, if you're not good at money, or one of your partners isn't good at money, get a financial advisor, get an accountant, get a bookkeeper, learn what all those things are, because they're all different, and get help, get outside help. We have really good support. I have a father that is very good at money and is very good at business money. So at the end of the day, if I'm really unsure, he's our go-to, and he gives us really good perspective. I have a bookkeeper that's phenomenal. I just learned that lesson this year, where it was like, just spend the little bit amount of money it's going to take to get that person to make sure you do your shit correctly. And that was a lesson I kind of had to learn as I went along the way. But if you're looking at doing this with a friend and there is any disagreements on money at all, get a third party, because it's the hardest thing to maintain, and it'll be the hardest thing to keep maintaining if you don't start off on the right track from the beginning.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And another point is like to be completely transparent about the money that the company is pulling in, because then everybody is on the same page and everybody knows what to expect. So this is something Mary handles the finances of the business, and she will create a spreadsheet and be like, this is what we made in January. This is why you're getting paid this much, or this is why you're not getting paid at all, or this is why, like, be transparent about what's coming in so that everybody's on the same page.
And I'll always ask you guys, like, I'm always kind of like, hey, like, if you have an invoice, I'll be like, do you need this right now or do you need it tomorrow? Or if I can pay you early, I'll ask, like, hey, do you want your money ahead of time or later? Like, when things are good, I try to compensate for the times that things are bad. Totally. Which is just what works for all of us right now. As, we get more legit and, get the paychecks rolling.
Do legit to quit. Get the money. We're rolling in money. I'm just kidding. We're not.
One day. One day.
All right. Next one. We're at 30 minutes, so we gotta
Let's keep it rolling.
Fire it up.
Yeah, I think we can go through this one quite quickly. Like the separate work and play. Yeah. Basically, as things started to really ramp up with everything we were doing, especially through COVID, we were only seeing each other. We're in isolation, so we would do like our little COVID bubble, and we realized really quickly that like our work and our play were convoluted, and we just got less done, because we would plan to do shit, then we would see each other, and then like want to just be friends and hang out and drink wine. And we realized that we also needed to like feed that part of our relationship. So Bridget, why don't you talk about some of the like ways we do that communication wise and so on.
So a lot of the things that we do, one of the big things that we made from the beginning was we actually have a separate text messaging stream, one for work. Like, we always will message on WhatsApp when it's for work, and we'll text each other when it's for anything relationship involved. So that's a big thing. What else do? We like to
call only if it's urgent. Usually
call if it's urgent. Yeah. That's a big thing. Like, if you need to know the information right away, just give them a call. We also like to make sure that the day, we'll plan out a day that's work and play, because we know that if we're together, we're going to end up wanting to hang out. So we'll make sure, like, okay, up until 5 p.m., we're doing work and we're not drinking. This is something that we've realized recently. Don't drink and work. It just doesn't, it turns into play. It's just not a good idea. So, we'll cut it off at 5 p.m. and we're still going to want to talk about work when we're hanging out together, but we do want to make sure that we're doing those activities that help us nourish that friendship and, like, keep the friendship alive, because that's when we get inspired. We get in, like, yes, we'll work, we'll get the tasks done during the day, but when we get inspired and we get to start talking about ideas, that usually happens when we're, like, hanging out as friends. So that's why that time,
we come up with, like, cool, crazy ideas, because we're not sitting here like, okay, like, we have this project, we really need to get it done. We are like drinking and enjoying and chatting and laughing and telling stories, and we're like, oh my god, wouldn't this be really cool for the company? And we kind of daydream. And what's been cool is over time we're like, oh, those things start to come true. Like, they come into play in, like, anyway, it's been really cool to watch that, like, just kind of create itself, but it just really emphasized for us we need to give ourselves that time to play and dream and just like create with no expectations, and we can embellish on our ideas, and it just doesn't matter because we're just hanging out. And then also when we're working, we can be like, hey, put a pin in that story I need to tell you, and stay on track.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely like make times during the day and like a cutoff time to stop working and crack a beer and be friends, because it's gonna help you get inspired. You also want to make sure that you're like celebrate those small things together. You can combine work and play in in all situations if you want to, but you want to make sure like use that friendship that you have to celebrate those small victories that you're making with work. Go out for a beer. It's going to help you stay inspired when you are recognizing the work that you're both doing and congratulating each other and actually enjoying that time together. So like nourish your friendship in working environments if you need to.
Yeah, and like people, I feel so cliche when people ask me about the company. You're like, it's so much work. I work all the time. It's a drag. It's a haul. Like all these, but it's so true. And like I keep saying to people, like, you know, we have weddings all over Ontario, and we have these events happening like crazy. Like the next several months are going to be insane. So anytime we can like, let's go out. Like we're doing a really cool wedding on a boat in May, and we have nothing the next day. So I was like, Bridget, we get the hotel, we hang out, and we go out after. Yeah. We don't really have social lives the way you would if you had a 9-to-5 job or a job that you can shut off. When you own your own company, you're the last call. You're always on call. If something happens and something's urgent, you have to answer the phone. So you're technically always on. So for us, it's like we go out and celebrate those wins. We find those opportunities to still enjoy life. And that's why we're doing this, because we're not going to get weekends. We're not going to get the summer off at cottages. So we find those times together to embrace how much we love what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think is this one me or you? The next one. I did yours.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just going to like move forward on this. So, because we just had like a really funny, cute moment last week. So things are starting to really ramp up. We just spent a year and a half rebuilding the company from like all the COVID crap. And so, as I said, Bridget and I like basically only really saw each other more than anyone else. More than our families, and we were on the podcast together all the time. We had time to just like do everything. Now we're in like crazy action mode. Riverside's picking up. Bridget's like part of this like very innovative company that is moving at a very fast pace. Collective Creations is like more raging than ever. Events are up and rolling, and we don't have that communication time anymore. We don't have that time to like hang out and chat. So, this is something that if you're not aware and you don't take the right steps forward, could actually cause a problem in business endeavors. As people start to get busy, maybe your communication is changing. Maybe, you know, like your text messages are getting more curt because you're more busy, or you're not responding at all, or you're not checking in, or it seems like one person's more invested than the other just because you're not seeing each other the way you were, which is kind of where we landed last week. I got really busy with an in-person event that was fairly urgent and time-consuming and exhausting, and Bridget got really busy with work, and both of us just had our heads in the sand. We were just working, which is a great place to be. Like, we weren't worried about the company. We weren't building the company. We were just operating. And I got to the end of the week and I was like, I haven't talked to Bridget in like 2 weeks. And then I looked and I was like, we haven't really communicated. She's been like, her texts are a little quick pace versus like lengthy and long, which usually Bridget, when she texts, will like really get into her details because it's like voice to text or something. And I was like, I had a quick moment where I was like, is she mad at me? I was like, I don't know why she would be mad at me, but maybe she's mad. So instead of like worrying about it or overcompensating or then just turning around and getting mad at her for some reason, because sometimes people do that in their heads.
Yep.
We're getting defensive. I was just like, hey, I hope you're doing well. Seems like we're really busy. It feels like you're mad at me, but maybe that's why, because we just haven't talked. I just laid it all out, and you laughed. And I did it as a voice memo, not a text message.
Which is big.
Yeah, text and emails.
That's a big point of communication.
Yeah, everyone communicates differently over email and text, and punctuation and grammar matters. And if you don't use it correctly, it can cause a fight. So, and Bridget laughed and was like, no, not mad, just also busy. Hope you're good. And then we followed up with like a legit phone call to like catch up and kind of like fill that cup again. Because I think even just like relationship wise, it was nice. But business wise, it was like, okay, no, we're still good. We're moving. We're on the same page. It was like a warm hug.
Yeah, it was nice. And then we both get inspired again. Like keeping that line of communication allows you to remind yourself why you're working with the other person. Because at some point, like you don't remember it if you don't talk to each other for a long time. And then you talk to each other, you're like, oh yeah, that's why we work together so well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that might relate to this or might be doing something similar to us are people that have had similar experiences of working in environments with people they didn't work well with, or bullies, or, you know, for me, it was like a lot of really shitty bosses that I didn't work well with, and they didn't work well with me. And so some of that comes back to you, like even when there's so much trust and we get along and we know each other so well, that shit comes back. And in small moments like that, it can like trauma can trickle in and really like fuck with your brain. And you're, as I say, like this business is our baby and we need to constantly be nourishing it, and we can't get resentful. So we always put each other first, and we always lead with kindness and check in with that other person at all times, even when everything we've just talked about. Yeah. And in those moments, put that person first, be honest and real, and just be like, hey, is everything okay? Communicate. Yeah. And another thing is like make sure that you're on the same page, not on the same page, but you know where the other person's at, like physically, emotionally, mentally. Like Mary and I always make a point to be like, how are you? How are you doing right now? Just so you know, like, and we'll be honest, like, hey, having kind of a slow week, not feeling too great this week. And then, you know, like respect that, and don't give them, like, don't talk as much about work if you don't think that that's like where their mind's at right now. Like by knowing where they are physically, emotionally, and mentally, you know how to properly communicate with them throughout that week. So you're always changing the forms of communication. Yeah, and that's the beauty of this, like, that's the exciting part of starting a business with someone is like, on the times that you're really stressed and overwhelmed, or you're like, I gotta have my head in the stand, I just started this new job, I had the time to carry the ball. So I was like, I got you, I'll carry the extra weight. Yeah. But if there's a time where you're both in that place, that's where you can turn around and be like, it's our company. So let's just change the expectations. Let's change our SMART goals. Go back to because you can. Like, you're not working for a big company or someone else where you're like, I can't do anything but just keep grinding this out. You can adjust that. That's the beauty of this job. If you get too stressed and overwhelmed and both of you need a break, and you can, take the fucking break and respectfully give each other that. But if you can also just say, you know what, I got your back right now, because when I'm stressed and overwhelmed, you're going to have my back, and you know that person's going to be there for you. Like, that's why you do this. That's why you start a company with someone, is because you've got that person that you're like, we got this, they got this, in every circumstance will be okay. But what you just said is like a very, very, those check-ins will keep you from hating each other and never talking again. Yeah. And will keep efficiency. It will keep things efficiently rolling at all times. And the most efficient way to do it, like you said, phone calls, because that way you're on the same page. You're not, there's nothing wrong. Like there's nothing coming in with that text message that's going to make the other person think something that you were not meaning to say properly. That was a long-winded way of saying that. But you said it. But it's important, and we've seen it in many times where, like, I think both of us were like, I'm really glad we did this, because I was feeling down or uninspired or angry or resentful about even just having this. And then you talk to the person and you're like, I love what I do. I love it. Yeah. So definitely communication, I think, is one of the most important points that we're mentioning today. Do we have two other points? We have two other points. So you want to define roles based on your strengths. So Mary and I are very lucky with this because we both like things that the other person doesn't. So it was pretty easy to divide our roles. But if you both don't like doing something, split the task equally. Keep your eye on the goal. If you have those SMART goals, it's a lot easier to divide unwanted tasks and stuff like that. So definitely make sure that you are figuring out what your strong suit is and then nourishing that strong suit in your respective roles. Yeah. Yeah, and we are constantly making sure that everyone's happy with the roles that they're playing and the tasks that they're doing. And because, you know, especially with the podcast and like social media, even there's a product we want to deliver, there's a quality we want to serve. So if one of us gets really busy and we notice that that's like dropping, we check in to be like, okay, can the other person manage this and take this on? And is it worth it? Like with the podcast stuff, that's obviously your world. We've kind of landed in a place where it's like, Mary could take this on. Should Mary take this on? We're still not sure yet. We don't want that quality to drop. And so it's, again, we're like that whole process we talk about, but having those roles defined just makes it really easy when something comes in. It's like, okay, well, that's a Bridget thing. That's a Mary thing. Right? Like anything with branding for Collective Creations, I could take it over. I could say it, but I'm like, no, that's Bridget. She, like, you've been working. That's your baby. You have ideas for the future. I don't know how that falls in line with your plan. That's you. And then vice versa with other, you know, money. You said I lead it. So if something comes in with money, you always check in and we talk about
Mary.
it. Yeah. And it just, again, it's like creating that communication, creating those boundaries. And it also just helps you wrap up why you're doing everything in a nice little bubble, to see that you balance each other out and create a little yin yang situation. It's a recipe for success.
It's a recipe for success. And the last point is to take time apart when necessary. Like Mary said a couple weeks ago, we just didn't talk for a while because sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to take a step back from the other person because you're going to be seeing each other double as much if you are working together and you're friends. So make sure to take those breaks from each other so you don't start to get, you know, I don't know, angry, overstimulated by the other person. You want to make sure to take those breaks, take a breather, and then come back in, and that brings into the check-in time, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, and like anything, it's good to miss something. It's good to have breaks from things. We have that in every aspect of our lives. Balance is obviously good, but it does, like, when like we get to the point of missing each other, it like re-inspires everything.
Yes.
It ignites that flame, and so it's just like, it's all part of that healthy balance.
Totally. And so those are all of our tips for today. We hope that this episode has been valuable to you. As always, we love feedback, so let us know if you like this kind of episode because it is a bit different from our usual format, and we are planning to do more of them, so let us know. And again, make sure to follow the show wherever you're listening and keep up with our Tough Mudder journey on Instagram at Talking 20 Podcast. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.